When I think back to my first few years living on my own, I remember how overwhelming it felt. I was super career focused at the time, and I think it was safe to say that I would put that first and my health second, which is obviously not a good way to be. When I was living with roommates in Brooklyn, I would get takeout most nights rather than attempt to use our shared kitchen for anything other than microwaving a cup of noodles of ramen. And even when I did finally move into a building that had a gym, I would walk in wide eyed, totally stressed out, and end up just basically leaving without feeling like I even got a good sweat in. And I certainly wasn't taking care of my mental health either. I was really interested in building up a blog and Instagram presence on the side of my 9 to 5 job. And I would often fall asleep in bed working on my laptop late into the night. So maybe you can relate to some of this. And maybe at the start of the new year, you made resolutions to take better care of yourself this year or be a little bit healthier, but you don't really have a clear idea or specific picture of what that means. I'm here today to hopefully provide some ideas and inspiration for how to make that a reality in the least intimidating and most judgment free way that I can possibly think of, because I know health is deeply personal and different to a lot of people, but I thought that maybe sharing my story could help in some ways. Before we get into today's episode, we have to first do a little create and consume, as is tradition and also just mandatory for the podcast that's called Create and Consume. So, as far as what I'm creating this week, I shared my 2025 influencer income breakdown video on YouTube. And this is a video that I post every year on my channel. I've been doing one of these every year since 2021. So, I think this is the 5th year in a row that I've done it, which is kind of crazy. And even as I have shifted the focus of my YouTube channel to be more lifestyle driven and include more vlogs, I do still think it's important to post this video each year to continue to contribute to the pay transparency conversation around content creators and show everyone what my income streams are and where I actually am getting money from. Now, I don't share like my total end of year salary, for lack of a better term, in the video, but I do share exact percentage breakdowns from my 2025 income. So I walk you through each of my income streams, from the one that made me the least amount of money, literally 1% of the pie, but still worth mentioning, all the way up to my largest income stream that accounted for almost 40% of my income from 2025. And I also talk through expenses from the year. I mention which income streams are active and require trading time for money and which are more passive and are able to kind of function even without me actively maintaining them. And I also decided to talk about what I think creators should focus on in 2026 in this video too. Usually it is just a walkthrough of each income stream, but I wanted to, as I talked about in my social media trends episode, try to make the content a little bit more geared towards my audience and not necessarily just reporting something that happened to me, but kind of tying it back into here's what you should do going forward, or here's what I would do if I were you to build a sustainable content creator business, not just something that depends on the success of the next viral video, but something that can actually be a long-term business that you could see yourself running for years to come. So I'll link that in the show notes if you want to check it out. I do feel like it's one of my more popular videos for the year, so I hope that you do get a chance to watch it. And for what I'm consuming this week, as always, there's plenty to choose from. So much great TV on right now, and I believe the day this episode comes out, we're getting the first drop of episodes for the new season of Bridgerton, which is super exciting. But I'm going to go for something that I actually did consume, like with my mouth and my body, and that is wine. Yeah, that's right. We're talking about wine in the health episode. You know, everything is about balance. So last weekend, Andrew and I had a date night at home. We decided to stay in, and I saw this idea on Instagram and decided to recreate it, where I basically put together a little at-home wine tasting for us. And I had so much fun doing this. I decided to venture out and try a couple of different wines that I feel like I am sometimes unsure if I like or not. I feel like I know my wines that I'm always going to come back to and love. I love a Sauvignon Blanc. I love a Pinot Grigio. I love a Chianti. I love a Cabernet. So I decided to mix in some of the wines that I wouldn't necessarily reach for as much. I figured this was as good a time as any to try some of them, especially when you can get like a $10 bottle from the grocery store versus ordering it at a restaurant and making like a $60 mistake, if you know what I mean. So anyway, we had it all set up where I pulled out like literally every wine glass that we have and set it all up in a row. And then I pulled out parchment paper and wrote underneath each wine which wine the glass was. And then I also provided 4 little bites. I did ask ChatGPT to help me put this together. I said, like, what can I put with the Prosecco? What can I put with the Rosé? So did get a little bit of assistance there. So we went through in order. We went from like lightest to darkest in color, and we tried each one of the wines that I poured, and we ate all the little bites with it, and it was so cute. I live in such a fun area, but I also want to make sure that we are enjoying our home, just given the fact that, this is ours now. And I honestly had just as much fun with our night in as I do sometimes when we go out. And during these colder, darker days, both, in terms of the weather and also the headlines, there is something in the comfort of staying home and just being grateful for what you have here. So there will be content to come on that. I think I may have shared something on Pinterest already. So if that's up, I'll link it. But otherwise, expect a video on Instagram and TikTok, as long as TikTok's still functional, later this week. And as always, don't forget to let me know what you are creating and consuming as well. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify, feel free to leave a comment on this episode, and all the other ways to get in touch are always in the show notes. And with that said, let's get into the topic of today's episode. And I think I may have said this already, but I just want to reiterate, I know health looks different for everyone. I know health is something deeply personal, and what works for one person may not work for another person. And today's episode is not meant to preach anything in particular. I am not working with any brands on this episode. Obviously, I am not really trying to push any particular like products or diet or lifestyle. I just think that this is something that would have helped me, I don't know, 5 years ago, or even maybe like right after I first graduated, to just think about like, what are some little things, like what are some adjustments I can make or some positions I can put myself in to be a better, healthier version of myself. And this is not a weight loss guide. If anything, I have gained weight in the last few years. This is not, this diet is the one thing you should follow and you can never eat anything you like again kind of podcast, because I don't believe in that. I really have been just like looking for a format and way to kind of share my journey, even like, I don't know, for myself to listen back to if I ever feel like I have kind of gotten off track or feel a little misguided or just am not feeling like my best self, because I totally go through periods of time where that's the case. And I really just thought that kind of sharing my journey and breaking it down in this format could potentially be helpful for other people who are maybe thinking about some of these same things right now. And as a disclaimer, I hope this is obvious, but just in case it isn't, I have no medical background whatsoever. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a certified health coach. I'm not a nurse, doctor, nothing. So none of this is meant to be medical advice. I really just wanted to share my journey and my story. The purpose of this episode is not for you to write down every last thing that I say and go out and do exactly that. It's really more to provide some ideas and inspiration and really share the things that unlocked for me and have helped me get to a place where I feel like my healthiest self. Because I would say right now, this is probably the healthiest I've been in my life. And again, this healthy version of me, I think, looks a lot different than what I thought was maybe healthy when I was 21 or even 25. And also, if you feel like today's episode, after hearing that, is just not the vibe for you, not like what you want to be listening to today, totally understandable. There are over 80 other episodes of the podcast if you still want to chat and hang out and talk about something else. That's kind of the beauty of this like on-demand one-way phone call that we do every week. So if you want to still hang, there's plenty of more for you to choose from. But otherwise, let's get into today's episode. And I'm going to break this down into kind of the 3 main categories of health that I see the world through. So the first one is fitness and movement. The second is food and nutrition. And the third is mental health. Let's start with workouts and movement. And I'll give you as short of a background as I can about my fitness journey, for lack of a better word. And I would say that I didn't even really consider fitness an area of my life that I had to like make room for or seek out, just because growing up, I was a super active kid. I played soccer from like rec league at the time I was 5 all the way up through varsity soccer in high school and even a little bit of club soccer, like intramural soccer in college. And I also did musical theater starting in maybe the 5th or 6th grade at summer camp and did that basically all through high school and a little bit in college. So that was a lot of like dancing and moving around and being super active and learning breathing and movement and all of these different things. And I was also like a naturally skinny kid. I was constantly told by doctors that I was underweight. And even though I would eat basically anything I wanted, that never really seemed to change. So at the time, I just thought I was like blessed with a fast metabolism. When I got to college, specifically Barnard in the city, I did try Soul Cycle a couple of times. It was like something our sorority would do together. And I really liked it. I just didn't go with any consistency because the closest studio for a while to our campus was, I believe, on 79th Street, and I lived on 116th Street. I think in my senior year, they opened a location at 92nd Street, which was, like 20 blocks away. So that existed, but I don't remember going to it with any frequency. And even when I first graduated college, I started working in the city. I was walking everywhere every day. I was moving around a ton and I would work out occasionally, but again, I didn't have any consistent routine. And if anything, I was more often than not trying like boutique fitness classes that I would either get invited to by brands or that like a coworker would want to go to with me. And I actually did do a blog post about this back in 2017, which is kind of funny to look at now. So I'll link it in the show notes for you. But I talk about some of the classes that I tried, including trampoline class. It was called Jump Life. I don't think that exists anymore. Aerial yoga, which was again like more for the Instagram and the vibes than the actual workout. And then trapeze, which I actually really did love. There was a studio in Brooklyn that was only like 1 or 2 subway stops from where I lived in Williamsburg at the time. But again, trapeze is more just like a fun adrenaline rush than I think it is an actual workout. Plus, it was kind of expensive. Sorry, I know I said I wanted this to be short. I'm just trying to make sure I give ample backstory so that you can better like why the thing that actually works for me now works for me now. Then Andrew and I moved to Queens. And like I said in the beginning of this episode, our building had a gym, but like I would go and just feel so lost and confused. Like, what am I doing here? I don't know what music to listen to. I don't know what machines to use. I don't want to look stupid. I would usually just end up like getting on the elliptical, which was fine, but I was still doing a lot of walking at the time. So it wasn't really that much of an extra sweat or like boost of energy, if you know what I mean. And I feel like 2020 and the pandemic for a lot of people was a time where they like got super optimized, like where there was nothing else to do. So they like got super fit or like launched new businesses or like did all these things. And that just was not the case for me. I would have loved for it to be the case for me, I guess, if there was any way to spend time in quarantine. But for me, our focus was making sure that my dad was okay, like being around to answer phone calls from doctors. And I would get nervous to even like go on a quick walk around the neighborhood because I just like was so scared about missing a phone call, didn't want to miss anything. It was really, really bad and not looking good for a while. And we also couldn't visit him. So these phone calls were like our lifelines. So we were essentially like really tied to the phone, really scared to leave, ordered a lot of takeout. We had friends going to the grocery store for us, which was amazing. But, for the 4 months, I want to say that my dad was in the hospital and then he got moved, to a regular rehab ultimately and was able to come home and has been fine ever since, thank goodness. But that time, just like everything slowed and happened so much all at once. And health wise, looking back now, I do kind of see that as like a turning point for I really slowed down. I was also 25. I feel like my metabolism was starting to change a little bit. We were eating so much takeout. We weren't leaving the house. And that's like hard to kind of get out of at the end of the day too, Even when we returned to the city, I did try to go running with Andrew, which you guys, I know I say this all the time, but I'm so not a runner. And at the time, it was kind of just like the only option. Fast forward to us moving to Hoboken, 2021. And Andrew said, what if we got a Peloton bike? And, 2020, I want to say, was like the deep height of Peloton. I feel like everyone was obsessed. I feel like everyone who had one was like super cool, like so committed to their workouts and stuff. And it was almost a little bit like either at the very edge of the craze or like maybe even slightly after the craze. And my biggest hesitation about it was how expensive it was. Obviously, I was like, to spend over $1,000 on a workout bike felt kind of insane to me as someone who, again, didn't even have a basic like fitness routine, like wasn't even doing I don't know, Pilates at home with a 10-minute YouTube video once a week. Like, I had nothing to speak of. So that was one hesitation, making an investment like that when I had no idea if I would even use the thing or not. And then the other problem for me, because I'm me, was an aesthetic problem. I was like, where's it gonna go? And Andrew was like, what about there? Like, points to a corner in the living room. And I'm like, it can't go in our living room. Like, this is our blah, 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 blah. But the problem with our old apartment was that because it was one big room, that one big room was everything. It was the living room, it was the kitchen, it was the home office, it was the dining room, it was the laundry room. And once we got the Peloton bike, it became the gym too. Being in a 2-bedroom now where there's separation and additional spaces for things to exist has honestly changed my whole life. Like, I know that's so dramatic, but it's true. And here we are in 2026 in the home office. Right to the side of me is my Peloton bike. If you watch my vlogs, you probably know exactly where it is. And I know I just said that having a 2-bedroom apartment has changed my life, but another thing to add to that list of things that have changed my life is the Peloton bike. And again, I've never worked with Peloton, although I would love to, clearly, but this has been the big unlock for me. And I'm going to explain the reasons why, because to bring it back to you guys and how this might help you, finding a workout routine and something that truly worked for me was all about removing friction and removing excuses. For me, one of the excuses with going to group workout classes or studios was, well, not a lot of them are walkable to me. And also, I don't want to have to shower there, like on my way into work. Obviously, now I work for myself, I work from home. This is like the easiest possible thing for me because I literally can roll out of bed, change, and be on the bike within like 5 minutes of waking up, which is actually what I do. And it took a long time for me to find a real routine with the Peloton because at first when we got it, I was using it like one off, maybe once or twice a week here and there for like 20 minutes or maybe 30 minutes. I didn't really have any like goals or plans with it. I was kind of just excited that it was there and I was kind of testing the waters. But then I actually decided that I wanted to make more of a routine about it and figure out how to really utilize it, given that it's right here and I can use it whenever I want. When Andrew's training for a marathon, he usually either makes himself a schedule or finds a schedule online to kind of like base his training off of. So I actually did go to him and ask for help to make me some kind of schedule that wasn't overwhelming, that I could build up over time if I ever did have specific like goals or things I wanted to achieve, which I actually did end up doing the year of our wedding. We got married in September. So actually starting back in like December of the previous year, I did make a plan to increase the number of workouts I did and also start to add in strength training, which again was really something I didn't know anything about and hadn't done before. And even after our wedding, though, I've maintained my schedule. It's not as intense as it was, like in the 8 weeks leading up to the wedding. I wanted to kick it into high gear just because I like wanted to do that. But you guys, I looked at my Peloton streak today because one thing I also like about it is that it really tracks all my numbers. Like, I love having analytics and a record to look back on in the form of how often I showed up and how long I worked out, like which instructors I took the most. And as of right now, it says that I have a 161 week streak with the Peloton bike. And I just Googled how long is 161 weeks. That is just over 3 years. So the fact that I can sit here now and say that I've been working out consistently for 3 years is just not something that was even plausible to me, like in my early 20s or even just a couple of years ago. And I will say the only time I've ever cheated was like when we were in New Zealand on our honeymoon and I played like a 5-minute meditation on the Peloton app so that I wouldn't lose my streak. But otherwise, if you go back and like, if you're my friend on Peloton, if you look back at the numbers, like I show up every single week. And again, I like that it tracks metrics, just like how many classes did you take? How was your power output this time? And I like where I can see where I build up. I feel like that's something that was missing from Soul Cycle classes. They were a lot more woo-woo. I never had any idea like what number output I was on or how hard or fast I was going speed-wise. So seeing stuff like that really helps me understand a baseline. And even for days where I don't want to get on the bike and I don't want to work out, I know that even if I hit like what I know in my head to be a minimum amount of effort, that I'll feel good having done the workout. So my current workout routine with the Peloton is I do Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. Monday, I do 20 minutes because it's Monday. Like the fact that I even got on the bike on a Monday morning is pretty good, right? Wednesday, I do 30 minutes. And for both of those, I take an actual class with a Peloton instructor. And then Saturday is kind of like my treat day. So I usually do 45 minutes. And because Netflix and YouTube are hooked up to the Peloton, I'll either watch like Gilmore Girls or one of my favorite creators on YouTube so that it's an enjoyable ride since it's a longer amount of time. But then one thing that I'm trying to do again this year that I kind of fell off of at the end of 2025 is that I really stopped doing my strength workouts, which I feel like I can feel when I stop doing that stuff, which is actually so annoying, but is also proof that when you keep up with it consistently, you do notice the difference and the results, or at least I do. So for January, my goal has been to add on 10 minutes of strength after my 45-minute ride. And originally, I had this spaced out where I was doing it on Fridays. I think the thing I didn't like about that was it was like a third time or a fourth time, I should say, in a week where I actually had to like put on a workout set and like get myself excited to do it. And I was like, why don't I just tack it on Saturday? Because that's already the weekend. On Friday, I'm either okay, like I really want to start work, or at the end of the week, I'm just like truly exhausted and just want to like lay low and order pizza, as we do every Friday pretty much here. So I have been stacking it either before or after the bike on Saturday, and I feel like that's been going okay. So that's been my goal for January. I think I might keep the same goal for February to add back in just a 10-minute strength class on top of the 45-minute class at the end of the week. And then I hope I can increase that to a 15-minute add-on where I am increasing the time on Saturdays. And then I could maybe also see in the future me adding an additional strength workout, like maybe in April or something. Maybe I'll add in a different 20-minute strength class on a Thursday or something. And it's just become a non-negotiable for me. I always feel so much better after I get my workouts done. I now know what they're going to be, and I do try to vary my workouts a little bit when I can too. So I would say my primary workouts are the Peloton bike, the strength training that I do, which I know is not a lot, but at least it's like something, and I would like to kind of continue to build up on that in the future. And also walking. I, again, don't commute into the city every day, but I do live in a walkable neighborhood, and I am back on my routine of getting myself out for a walk. I also find that is really helpful for mental health too, which we're going to talk more about. And I'm just really good about planning things around it. Like, for example, I'm going away this weekend, so I'm going to do my Saturday workout Friday morning, just so that I know that it's done and checked off, because I leave Friday afternoon. And if I'm ever traveling for more of an extended period of time where I'm going to be missing like multiple workouts, I will still pull up the Peloton app on my phone. I have access to it on my laptop and my phone too. And I'll just do something on the go. Like I'll look for a no equipment core workout or strength or something like that. And I just feel like it gives me totally endless options. So it really has been amazing for me. And I think the key, again, is finding a workout that you like. For me, I do love cycling. I know a lot of the girlies love Pilates and bar and yoga. And for me, there is just something about the sweat and the cardio workout that I get from cycling that I truly enjoy. Finding a schedule that works for me, and also finding my workout time. If I don't do it in the morning, I've learned I don't do it. So I just do it right when I wake up, and then I don't have to worry about it. But maybe for you, you like to go after work to kind of clear your head after the day, or maybe you even like to go during your lunch break or mid-afternoon. I mean, hopefully, given the state of remote work and how the world has changed over the years, there's more flexibility than ever before to do your workout at a time that you feel is best for you. But yeah, so that's a little bit about my workout journey. And I know I mentioned varying workouts. I was reading an article about that, so I will link it in the show notes as kind of like a reference point / source. Okay, let's move on to food and nutrition. And I want to preface this by saying I'm a girl who loves to eat. Okay, I grew up in an Italian household where I ate pasta, I ate chicken, I ate really rich and flavorful foods. There were always leftovers. There was always room for more if you wanted more. And I love all of that stuff. And I am not someone who would ever ideally give that stuff up unless like I became severely gluten intolerant or something. So I think when I first moved out, like when I first went to college, obviously we had dining halls and, meal plans. And I also lived in New York, so I could quickly and easily get takeout whenever and wherever I wanted. But when it came to actually cooking healthy meals, I don't think this is something I really thought that deeply about at first. It more so became like what is quick and also what will feed like both me and Andrew once we moved in together. Like I mentioned earlier, when I was living on my own with roommates in Brooklyn, I just did so much takeout and I would stretch that stuff. I would make it work. I got the cup of noodles in like a bulk pack. I was always eating at that time. I just wasn't necessarily eating very well. And I do really feel like COVID and the pandemic was a big turning point for a lot of people. And it certainly was for me. Like it just became more evident than ever how important our health is and how valuable our health is. And one of the biggest things that we can control in terms of how healthy we are and how we feel throughout the day and our energy is what we put in our bodies. And it's so annoying that that's the case, but that is truly just how it is. And the very first thing that kind of inspired me to start like looking into this more or making healthier swaps is a cookbook called The Dude Diet. And it's written by this woman, Serena Wolf. Maybe some of you follow her on Instagram. I think she has like almost 100,000 followers and she posts like recipes and stuff. And the whole inspiration behind The Dude Diet, she said, was her husband loved, this isn't what the whole book is about, but I'm just going to call them like game day snacks and foods for lack of a better term. So like, beef chili, nachos, like all of those kind of foods that you would want while watching a football game. That was like everything her husband ate. And so she basically like uses this cookbook to remake recipes like that, but with like slightly healthy swaps. So in the cookbook, there's a shepherd's pie recipe, but it uses turkey instead of beef, and it uses cauliflower instead of mashed potatoes. There's also a turkey chili recipe that I've made a couple of times. There's chicken nachos with pita chips instead of beef nachos with tortilla chips. So it really is still like the same idea, but usually it's just swapping one big ingredient that makes it like a little bit healthier. And this isn't to say that you should never eat beef nachos or shepherd's pie made the normal way or any of that stuff. It's just in terms of like a regular basis, there are ways to make some healthy swaps and like sometimes choose a slightly healthier option. So that's kind of like the first thing that I really started thinking about. And I don't know if this is a hot take, or feel free to let me know if anyone disagrees with this, but I can't really tell that much of a difference between like reduced fat, non-fat, low fat, and full fat stuff. Every once in a while, I can kind of taste a difference. And if a recipe is really like, please use full fat cream cheese or please use this, like it really makes a difference with the taste, I'll take their word for it. But in general, like I try to buy like the reduced fat, non-fat, low fat stuff. And I'm sure there's a million different ways we could look at things like that. But for me, those are just like things that I don't mind picking up, and little, again, tiny ways that I'm like, all right, if I could get reduced fat peanut butter, then I'm probably just going to buy that one, Mostly just because I really don't taste that big of a difference, but maybe that's just me. And again, I really don't follow any particular diet. I'm not counting calories. I'm not tracking macros. I generally try to eat what I think is a reasonable amount of like lean proteins and vegetables and things like that. At the end of the day, if there is a rule at all that I follow, it's really like the 80-20 rule, which is 80% of the time I am cooking myself. I'm trying to eat as many whole, lean-ish foods as I possibly can. And I just do my best on that front. And then 20% of the time, I have fun. I eat pizza. I eat pasta. I eat all the things essentially. And the way that I've worked it out in my head, honestly, is really just a separation of like Sunday through Thursday and then Friday, Saturday. So Sunday through Thursday, again, I'm cooking at home. I go to the store, I buy groceries, I plan our meals from Sunday through Thursday, unless for some reason I have like a work event or something. If I'm going to be out in the city, I'll get Andrew something quick and easy that he can make at home, or maybe I'll make a big batch of something one night so that there's leftovers. That's not for you guys to worry about, obviously. But then Friday and Saturday, in our household, Fridays are pizza Fridays. I would say probably at least twice a month, if not 3 or 4 times a month, we are ordering pizza on Friday. Because you know what? I live in Hoboken. Some of the best pizza I've ever had in my life is here. And I like that as an end of the week thing for me to enjoy. So that is something that I'm not giving up. I'm not trading off on. We're getting pizza on Friday if I have anything to do about it. And then on Saturday, maybe we'll order out. Maybe we'll go out to dinner. Maybe we will just make something like different or fun that we've never made before at home. And, I love those chicken sausage breakfast burritos from Trader Joe's. Are they good for you? Absolutely not. But are they good? Yes, you guessed it. Absolutely, they are. If I have that once a week for breakfast, it's not the end of the world. If I want to go out and get a bagel on a weekend, again, not the end of the world. For me, as long as I do what I can Sunday through Thursday to try my best to eat what I think is healthy, then on the weekends I have fun. And that's just how it is for me. As my friend Charlotte always likes to say, everything in moderation, including moderation. And I would say that one of my goals for this year is to, in general, eat more whole foods when possible. And I have been scanning some processed foods with the Yuka app, particularly like the ones from Trader Joe's, because obviously I love a Trader Joe's frozen meal. And I feel like the Yuka app, I've heard mixed things about it. If you guys use it and love it or have any tips about it, let me know. My sister-in-law actually first recommended it to me, and I've heard other friends talk about using it too. I also did read on the flip side an article from a dietitian. I'm going to see if I can find it to link it in the show notes because I feel like I want to share like both sides and perspectives of it. And sorry, to back up for a second, the Yuka app, you scan a barcode in a grocery store or whatever of the food, and it gives you a score out of 100. So the closer it is to 100, the better food it is. If it's closer to like 0 or whatever, that's obviously bad. For the most part, I feel like the things I scan make sense to me, and it does make me feel good if I see that, one of my favorite frozen foods, like the Trader Joe's Thai gyoza shrimp dumplings, those seem to have a good rating. So that makes me feel good whenever we have them for lunch, because I love those and I didn't really want to remove them from the lunch rotation. But the dietitian in her blog post that I was reading, she talks about how it can be dangerous to assign moral value to food. Like, is a food good or is a food bad? So if you struggle with that when it comes to eating and meal planning and stuff, then I would probably say stay away from the Yuka app in that case. For me, it's one of those things where I kind of went around Trader Joe's once and scanned like all of the stuff so that I kind of have a reference point for it. And there's some stuff that like I know isn't good though. For example, the chicken burritos, and actually they weren't even rated like the worst out of all the things that I scanned. I would say the worst quote unquote things were more like toppings and stuff. For example, like the jalapeno drizzle topping that I put on like our bowls and stuff, which again, I'm probably never using more than like a tablespoon of that. And then like some fruit it thinks is like amazing because obviously it's just the fruit, so like the ingredients are simple, but some fruits are also sugary. So it's like, I think if anything it was kind of helpful to like go around the store once and get a reference point for everything, but I don't necessarily want to be scanning every little thing every time I go grocery shopping. I also would just like to be able to trust my judgment and ideally trust that if a food is available for purchase in a store, that maybe it's not the most healthy for you, but it obviously has to go through some regulations to even end up there in the first place. So again, I've kind of used it as a gut check before. I'm not going to change my entire diet and swap out everything I love to get to something that's 1% healthier, if you know what I mean. And then really quickly, I'll just share a couple of easy weeknight recipes that are currently in my rotation for the Sunday through Thursday where I do cook dinner every night. I really love doing like a salmon with a couscous or maybe orzo or even one of the Trader Joe's frozen pastas and then a side of broccoli. Like that to me is at the very least, the salmon and the broccoli are good. The grain that I choose to pair with it, maybe not the best, but like you've kind of got your 3 boxes checked. I also like doing sausage and peppers on the sheet pan. I do it with like a little bit of red onion too. And then I usually serve that over white rice. I mean, could I serve it over quinoa or brown rice? Sure. But I don't really like either of those. So we're meeting halfway. I also recently found a really good recipe for these kind of Greek-inspired chicken meatballs with orzo. I've made it a couple times. I'll link that recipe in the show notes because it's so good. I also like doing kind of a Mexican-inspired bowl. So I'll do like shrimp, rice, veggies, and top it with like, some cheese and salsa. And again, those are the things that the Yuka app is like, there's so much sodium in this. And it's like, yeah, but you're not using that much of it in theory. And I also like a turkey chili. I obviously beef is good too, but I kind of don't mind the turkey one. I don't know if that's crazy for me to say or not, but I make it with the tomato sauce and then I also throw in bell pepper and black beans. And what I like about that is it's filling, but it also feels pretty decently healthy, I would say too. And then the third piece of the puzzle for me is really mental health because your physical health is important. And you also really want to make sure you're taking care of your brain and taking care of yourself. I think the biggest and best thing that you can do is to get a good night's sleep. I know this is easier said than done for a lot of people. For me, one thing that really helps is basically having a bedtime and actually like sticking to it. I told you when I first moved to Brooklyn and I was working all day, I would literally come home and work on my blog basically until I fell asleep, probably at like 11 or something. And that's not the best. That's a lot of extra screen time on top of the screen time I already spent at work all day. I really had like no good boundaries around that whatsoever. Lately, I've literally been going to bed at like 9:45, which might sound super early or crazy to you, but even just being in bed by like 9:30 or even a little bit earlier and reading or doing something that doesn't involve scrolling has been super helpful for me. I also have this little lavender spray mist that I got from Bath and Body Works a few years ago that I keep next to my pillow, and whenever I feel like I need a little bit of extra help falling asleep, it basically acts as like an aromatherapy thing where the smell of lavender is just really calming and soothing, so it does help me fall asleep faster. And also, sleeping with a sleep mask has helped me a lot as well. I would say our bedroom is pretty dark at the end of the day. Like, if I really didn't have a sleep mask, I would probably be fine. But it's always just helpful because it's an added reminder that, like, your eyes are covered. So even if you're tempted to wake up or like look around or look at your phone or something, it's like, nope, we have shut down for the night. You know what I mean? It's like a physical reminder that you're in bed and it's time to go to bed. Another thing under the mental health umbrella for me that ties back into physical health is just who I choose to follow online or who I see online and just the inevitable comparison. Like, I don't ever really go out of my way to compare myself to someone else, but sometimes you can't help it as you're scrolling through Instagram or TikTok or whatever the thing is that you're scrolling through. In the past few years, GLP-1s have become a lot more readily available for people, and I do think that that's good and that anyone who wants to use one can. But, sometimes when you scroll through Instagram, it can just be a little bit discouraging, whether someone's using like a semaglutide product or not. And I will say for me, the body image and the comparison stuff really started within the last like 5 years for sure. And I think the key things to remember are, first of all, I'm 31 now. I'm not supposed to look how I looked when I was 21 because I was 21 then, I'm 31 now. And I still totally have moments of insecurities. Like sometimes I'll put something on in my closet and be like, oh, this doesn't fit the way that it used to, or why does it look like this in the mirror? And I just have to always take a step back and remember for all the time that I spend scrutinizing my body, it's just not worth it. And I'd rather live my life and enjoy my body than critique it. And sometimes I go through periods where I'm like, oh my gosh, I just feel like, for example, with the strength training and stuff, like I can feel that I haven't been doing it. Not even so much looks wise, but even just like in my core, like, oh, sometimes getting up from the couch is a little harder. I'm like, is this what getting older is? Is this 31? Or picking up packages and stuff, like random things like that, where sometimes I find myself struggling and I'm like, I don't want to be struggling like that. I mean, if it makes me feel a bit more toned or whatever cosmetically, then great. But at the end of the day, I just want to make sure that I am taking care of myself, that I'm around for the people that I love. And I am sure that there are plenty of people who would love to have my body, the same way there are plenty of people who I would love to have their body. But at the end of the day, we get one body, we get one life. And to spend time critiquing it and to not just be grateful for it, for all the things that it allows me to do, I feel like would be a waste of time, especially, almost losing my dad a few years ago, especially losing Andrew's dad in 2024. Like every day that I have my health is a day that I'm grateful for. And if I'm going to sit around and worry about, oh, I don't like how my stomach looks on that, I'm not going to post it on Instagram. If that's my biggest problem, then I don't have a problem. You know what I mean? And I always say this, you guys, the unfollow, the mute, the restrict, the block buttons are all available to you on social media. So use them whenever you need to for whoever you need to use them for. Also, on the mental health front, I always think it's important to check in with yourself and ask yourself if you could use a little bit of extra support from someone who's not, a friend or an immediate family member. I personally have now done online therapy 2 different times. I did it once in 2021, and I also did it again in 2024. And I've used platforms like BetterHelp, Talkspace. Honestly, you could do whatever your insurance covers. I think BetterHelp, you can also pay out of pocket if you don't have insurance. So there are totally options. Even if you're not sure about it, you could always try it, and you could always, look for a new therapist or change things around a little bit. I also ended up switching therapists at one point during my journey of, talking to people, talking to therapists online. I'm just such a big proponent of it because, again, like I did it for a couple months each time and it really helped me. And, sometimes the best time to have a therapist is even when things are going well, because there's always something to talk about, even if you don't think there is. Sometimes I would log on to a session and be like, can't really think of anything I want to talk about today. And like 5 minutes in, I'm yapping about something. Again, just to have an outlet like that and someone who is there to give you their full attention, like that you are paying for, and to listen, and someone who has a medical background who can actually help with stuff. Like I said, I've done it twice now and I've found it so helpful both times that I've done it. And how great is it, again, that we live in a world where like that is accessible from your laptop. You could literally be in bed and doing therapy. And some other things that I think have been really good for my mental health: analog hobbies. Talked about that, I believe, at the start of the year episode. So for me, reading is a big one. I know I've also done watercolor before. I really need to find my watercolor set. I said that in another episode, and I haven't gotten any closer to finding where it is in the apartment. So I will uncover that and report back shortly. I know the girls are also very into needlepoint lately. There's also sewing, baking sourdough, lots of different things that don't involve a screen. Taking that time to unplug and be offline, and even just going for short walks every day. Again, just getting some vitamin D. I love that I live in a walkable neighborhood where I can space out, like, okay, today I want to go to the grocery store here, I want to go to the drugstore there. And I know that I'm kind of like getting something done, but I'm also just going for my normal walk. And I feel like I've already been talking for quite a while, but a few other rapid fire things to close out this episode that I feel like have helped contribute to just my overall health and me trying to be my healthiest self. Another one is beauty routines. And I put this towards the end because I guess it's not as quote unquote essential, but really when you think about skincare, your skin loses a lot of moisture throughout the day. So at the very least, applying a face moisturizer and sunscreen is super important. Same with body care, moisturizers, SPF, occasionally exfoliating so that the moisturizer can actually like really settle in and do its thing. I'll even throw in oral care here, brushing your teeth, flossing. I historically have not been the best flosser. It's something I'm actively working on and trying to get better about. And also on that note, trying to keep up with all of your different health appointments. I have a bit of health anxiety. Like I don't love going to doctors, generally speaking, but I've really been trying to push through that and power through to get to all of my like annual appointments. So as of right now, I've already done an annual physical. I do have the gyno scheduled for next month. Not that you guys need to know that, sorry. I need to call the eye doctor today, and I went to the dentist right before the holidays. So I feel like having all of those things, for me, I find booking them around the same time is actually really helpful because then you can kind of knock them all out in pretty much one sitting. So if there's ever any chance to like align all of those things up, you could even just do like doctor week where you go to one different person each day for a week and then you're done for probably at minimum 6 months for the dentist, but maybe even for a whole year in some cases. That's a good feeling. That's an organized girl if I've ever heard it. And also, when in doubt, look for some affirmations online. Say some nice stuff about yourself out loud to yourself in the mirror. I know it sounds like you're in a movie or like in a novel that's not real life, but it actually is really helpful to do. I have a free app called I Am that gives you, I think, 20 different affirmations a day. I want to try to be better about looking at it first thing in the morning. I feel like I haven't been because I've been trying to avoid my screen first thing in the morning. But I did just do a quick search on Pinterest, so let's read through a couple of these to wrap up the episode. I radiate confidence and positivity. Change is scary, but so is staying the same. I'm stepping into the most successful year of my life. I am becoming the best version of myself. Oh, this is a good one. I have to do this is crossed out, and underneath it says I get to do this. Progress over perfection. I am disciplined and I am consistent. And how about we end on this one? I am so excited for all the good things to come. I think that is a really great place to end off on. So, thank you guys so much for joining me for another week. I feel like this episode was a little vulnerable for me, but if you enjoyed it, please do reach out and let me know. You also can always DM me if you don't want to comment anywhere publicly. But I really appreciate you guys sitting down and hanging out with me this week, and I will talk to you all again in the next episode.